This is the walking tour of San Marcos de Apalache Historic State Park. Welcome to San Marcos de Apalache Historic State Park. This site is managed by the Florida Park Service in an effort to protect, preserve, and interpret Florida's rich cultural heritage. This self-guided trail is a leisurely walk through the grounds.
Wooden stockades were built here by the Spanish in 1680 and 1758. In 1758, these were destroyed by a hurricane which drowned the garrison. A masonry fort was begun in 1759, but was soon abandoned to the Indians for a trading post and Indian rendezvous. It was reoccupied by the Spanish in 1783. General Andrew Jackson seized and occupied the fort in 1819. It became a United States possession in 1821 upon the purchase of the territory from Spain. And it's continued on the other side. Let's see what the other side says. It was occupied as an army post until 1824, when the Indians were removed to a reservation. The town of St. Mark's was created by an act of Congress in 1830 and became a port of entry before railroads were extended to the seaboard. The fort was reestablished and occupied by the Confederate Army during the Civil War, and a federal naval attack on the fort was repulsed in 1865.
This is the Confederate Earthworks, 1861 through 1865. When Florida seceded from the U.S. in 1861, the state's seaports became vulnerable to attacks from the Union Navy. To protect shipping at St. Mark's, Confederate forces built Fort Ward on the site of the old Spanish fort. This north wall was built with loose debris and earth and was braced with rows of wooden posts. The embankment was high enough to hide the soldiers while standing up. Behind the wall, the garrison was filled and leveled the old Spanish moat to serve as the fort's main floor. Cannons were mounted to dominate both rivers. Fort Ward kept St. Mark's and the uptown river of Newport secure until the Union invasion of 1865.
And these steps right here lead over the earthworks. And this is the top of it. You can see the bottom over there and the bottom over there. And straight ahead is the earthworks. From this point, we're going to head to the magazine.
Fort Ward Confederate Powder Magazine, 1861 through 1865. This large hill is the remains of Fort Ward's powder magazine. Soil was heaped in a protective mound around an interior storage space built from stones and wood. Most of Fort Ward's gunpowder and explosives were stored inside. A second, smaller magazine served cannons and soldiers who fortified the Waukulla River.
Okay, this is the top of the old magazine. You can see it's a fairly good sized mound. And it looks like there's a burial here. Charles E. Dedrick, 75 years old.
Station 4 is the Fort Ward gun position, 1861 to 1865. Confederate troops mounted a battery of cannons here in the remains of the old Spanish Bombproof. The earthworks provided the additional protection needed for this strategic position. Ammunition for the cannons was stored in the main powder magazine, located directly behind the gun position. The early forts from 1680 to 1758. This strategic point of land was used to control access to both the St. Mark's and Waukulla rivers. The original 17th century Spanish fort stood nearby, and later Spanish and British forts were also located in the area. Although this area is subject to flooding and storms, It was important enough then to occupy and defend the area at the expense of soldiers' lives.
And this was the old fort right here. It says this is the site of the original Spanish fortifications. The first fort was a flimsy wooden fort started in 1678 and completed in 1679. The second fort, also of wood, was built in 1718 on this site. A hurricane flooded this fort in 1758 and 40 men were drowned. The effects of this hurricane required a new start on the construction of a stone fort. Alright, now here we are at number 6. And this is the bomb-proof foundation of it. You can see the stone right there in the ground.
These stone foundations are the remains of the Spanish bomb-proof. It was built to protect men and supplies during an attack. Construction began in the 1750s and was not entirely completed until after 1785. The bomb-proof was built of limestone blocks quarried from a site located about a mile downriver. It had 4 rooms with arched ceilings and strong doors. The roof was used as a firing position for soldiers who defended the fort's north wall. When the Marine Hospital and the St. Mark's Lighthouse were built around 1857, stones from the old bomb-proof were used. In 1861, Confederate soldiers located one of Fort Ward's batteries and the remains of this bomb-proof.
Okay. And here's the old foundation. Kind of hard to see without walking on it. I'm not going to walk out there. But there's the front part of it, foundation, cornerstone. And then that right there was the forward gun mount right there, overlooking the water. And right behind it, that hill, is a magazine.
Station 7, the north wall. The small 4 rooms on the left were just inside the north wall of the Spanish fort at San Marcos. The wall protected the fort's land side from attackers. It was built of limestone from a quarry downriver. On the other side of the wall was a moat which connected the Waukulla and St. Mark's rivers. From the late 1820s until the Civil War, much of the stone in the wall was used in local construction projects. When the Confederates built Fort Ward, they finished filling in the moat. They banked soil up against the exposed stone of the old Spanish fort for added protection.
So here's that. There's the forward gun mount and the bomb-proof. That hill right there, that would be the magazine. And down here is the old moat through the bushes.
This is the Bastion of San Fernando. This bastion projected from a corner of the fort. It was constructed of limestone from a quarry downriver. From here, soldiers could fire at ships in the Waukulla River. They could also defend the areas under and along the north and west walls of the fort. In 1861, Confederates filled the remains of the bastion with soil and emplaced a battery of cannon. A small powder magazine located nearby served the battery.
How long is forever? San Marcos Bastion Wall. You are looking at a wooden revetment, a barrier constructed to protect the remains of the original Spanish stone wall. The wall was part of the outer defenses of the fort, San Marcos de Apalache. Construction of the stone bastion began in 1739. The new fort replaced a small wooden outpost at the point, a short distance to your right, which had been flooded during the hurricane the previous year. Protection from erosion. Rising sea levels, boat wakes, and other disturbance had caused destructive erosion through the years. In 1996, the Florida Park Service built a wooden revetment. Although it conceals the actual remains, the revetment will protect the historic Spanish wall from further deterioration and preserve the fort for future generations. And down here is a little close-up. You can see like the wall, and then they put the wood out front and then fill it with soil. And there's the protected wall now.
Station 1, the Marine Hospital. The foundation of the museum is made from the ruins of a sailor's hospital. The U.S. Treasury Department constructed this hospital in 1857 through 1858 to care for ailing seamen, particularly those with yellow fever. The hospital foundation was made from large stones salvaged from the old Spanish fort. The practice of reusing material from old buildings was common in the 19th century. Even the lighthouse, 6 miles south in what now is the St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge, was built from stone from the fort. Station 11, the American Cemetery, 1817 through 1818. Army troops and militia under Andrew Jackson occupied the Spanish Presidio military post at San Marcos in 1818. The men found the place very inhospitable, and several died of disease. These men who died so far from home were buried in a cemetery near the fort. During development of San Marcos as a state historic site, the cemetery location was discovered. Because the cemetery conditions were deplorable, the soldiers' remains were reinterred at this location. Here they rest. Fort St. Mark's Military Cemetery. Here are interred the remains of 19 soldiers of the 4th and 7th Regiments of the United States Infantry and the 4th Battalion of the United States Artillery. These men were members of the garrison of 200 stationed here during the first United States occupation of Fort St. Mark's, May 18 through March 1819, under the command of Brevet Major A.G.W. Fanning. The deaths of these soldiers were described in company records as being due to consumption, dysentery, etc. The original military burial ground was located about 1,200 feet east of this point. Your tour of the fortifications of San Marcos de Apalache has shown you the actual remains of historic events. The museum interprets the history of the site as it relates to surrounding communities. We invite you to visit us and enjoy the exhibits inside.